Hi there, my name is Jay with ServerMatter and also with CompuMatter. The purpose of this video is to educate you about the next part in the process of installing your new server. That step is the opening of ports in your firewall. As always, we're going to assume your company has no IT department and that you have no knowledge about firewalls. We want everything we do to be as layperson friendly as is possible. Before we go further, I want you to understand the similarity between your router and your government's postal department. I know that sounds a little odd, but they both deliver something. One delivers paper mail, and the other delivers websites or other internet-related content. The Postal Service knows to deliver that envelope because it has written on it your address, 123 Anywhere Street, for example, or anything else. But if there was no address, it couldn't be delivered. On your network, if Joe, Richard, and Laura, for instance, were all on the same network, and Joe wanted to view a news website, he would type in the name of the website, and we won't get into which news website. The router will go out and get the new website, the news website, and deliver the pictures, text, and videos of that website back to Joe. That's how it works. The router doesn't know Joe. The router knows the IP address of Joe's computer, and that's the one that asked for that website. And it always delivers that website back to the same address that asked for it. Therefore, the way the router finds the IP address on a network for a particular computer works very much the same way the Postal Service will look for the address at your home. Without a router, you can imagine the surprise for Laura or Richard if they asked for one thing and got the website that Joe asked for sent to their computer screen. Your new server also has to have an IP address, just like Joe, Richard, and Laura, and anything else attached to the router. Here's one other thing I'd like you to keep in mind. A router has an inside world and an outside world. The inside world is your business network. That's Joe, Richard, Laura, any network printers, and anything else that is on the inside, also known as your internal network. The outside world, also known as the external network, is everything on the planet on the other side of that router. Your router also has something called a firewall, which is essentially a police department living inside of it, whose job is to know if any text, image, or video coming through the router from the outside world is being let into the internal network, which in fact was initially requested by an IP address on that same internal network. I know that's a little confusing, but in other words, Richard, Laura, or Joe had better have asked for whatever's coming in from the outside world, or the firewall police will set up a blockade and not let that data pass into your internal business network. Your firewall is your network's police department. So Joe and Richard and Laura have a trust relationship because they're on the internal side of things. The firewall police can take a donut break and let the website pass through the router into the business because they know it happened, it initiated internally. However, if anything is coming in that didn't originate from the internal network, it will be stopped in its tracks. Now, just like any police blockade, there are exceptions. For instance, if the visitor enters through a secret side door and shows their press credentials, the police will wave them in. Maybe a different secret side door is for band members and VIPs, where the police will also wave them in. In the case of a firewall on your router, these side doors are called ports. When we emailed you and asked to configure your firewall, what we're asking to do is open a number of side doors, aka ports, that allow the outside world to access your server. The technical name for this configuration is called port forwarding. Each program that you want your staff to have access to has a port number or side door number associated with it. Once the person on the outside goes through that side door and gets to the server, the application itself will have its own security in place. For instance, VPN software allows your staff to access their files and folders from anywhere in the world. However, to get to their folders, your staff has to travel from the outside world through the firewall to the internal network. That process will begin with them opening the VPN software installed on their laptop. That software will show up at the router and ask to be let through the side door. Let's call it port 6700, for instance. We will have previously configured your router to say anyone arriving on port 6700 should be given a free pass and allowed to your server instead of blocking them. Now, the visitor, i.e. your staff, arrives at the server and is greeted by the VPN software that lives on the server itself, which has been listening for anyone who might arrive through that side door, i.e. port 6700. Now the server's VPN software has its own security team, and it will ask your staff for their username and password, and it will verify those credentials against your ServerMatter service credentialing system. If they match, they'll be allowed to access their files and folders. If they fail, they will be blocked by the server's VPN security. So that's a high-level view of how things happen and the long answer to why we need access to your server. We need to configure the firewall and tell it which side doors, i.e. port numbers, need to be opened so your staff can access certain applications from the outside world. In this way, the entire world can't use the applications on your server, only those that pass validation. Without opening these ports, all staff members will be blocked and unable to use your server's programs when they are outside your business. Now, if you have your own IT department or are paying someone else to do this, or perhaps want to take it on yourself, let us know that you would like us to send you a list of the applications, their ports, and the IP address of the server they should point to. And as always, we'll be happy to pass that along to you. Our goal is always to empower you where you want to be empowered, but be there if you need us. Alternatively, if you bought a ServerMatter server from us, as you probably know, you receive 4 free hours of labor as our thanks for doing so. However, we'll need 2 things to make those changes for you. Remote access to a computer on your business network. That will allow us to bring up your router's web page on the network and make the changes. And we'll also need the username and password to your router. No matter who is configuring your firewall, they'll need your router's login username and password. If you don't know that, we have another video which I'll link to in the description below that will be of value in tracking that down. We would be very irresponsible not to take a few minutes to talk about caution when it comes to firewalls and router configurations. There are probably hundreds of makes and models of routers and firewalls. They each have their own menus and their own ways to navigate. However unlikely it may be, if a human error is made during the configuration of your firewall, the possibility of them blocking all access to your business exists. And I want you to let that soak in for just a moment. So let me recommend some precautions that if we're involved, we will certainly take, and if you have someone else involved, we want you to ensure they take. And the first is, after logging into your router, record a video while clicking on each menu item and each screen that menu item leads to and the configurations within those screens. All screens should be videoed. The other thing is, make a backup of your router's existing configuration. There is a place in every router to do this. It backs up to a small file which can be saved on your computer. By doing these 2 things, if saving the configuration causes any unacceptable side effects on your network, the original settings can be imported anew so you have another chance to get it right. The video is a fallback for the rare event that the configuration file you backed up is corrupt. We have experienced that, though it is rare. You can then use the video to put your settings back in place by hand. Okay, that covers safety. Now let's talk about a rare case we ran into where a business was using residential internet service and not business class. Their internet service provider installed a home router. Home routers usually work. This one only supported port forwarding for some gamer activities and prevented anything else. This is probably a built-in mechanism to try and force business users to upgrade their service. However, in this case, we were able to sell the client a business class router instead of renting the home router from their internet service provider. So they were able to stop that rental agreement by a one-time purchase of a business class router. We pre-configured the firewall ports for their server before shipping it to them. That solved the problem without having to upgrade to business class service. So that's it. Reply to our email on what you'd like us to do here. If you want us to do it, have your router's login information ready for us. We'll make an appointment to remotely access a computer on your network and configure your firewall in advance of your service delivery. If you or somebody else is doing it, let us know, and we'll supply you the information you or they will need to have in hand. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, thank you for being our customer. Bye-bye.